Hey Life groups, I know that you're going to be in for a really great morning or evening whenever it is that you are doing these groups. And I know that Sunday just gone was somewhat of an unusual Sunday, right? The message was a little bit off script to what we would normally do. But actually the synopsis, the whole point of the story is about the Father heart of God towards his people. So I just took that whole synopsis from the book of Hosea about the life of Hosea and how God wanted to teach the people of that time something through the life of Hosea. And I want to remind you of something that I did say from the platform, and that was not every adversity that you go through is actually a problem that the enemy is throwing at you. Because sometimes God will allow you to go through something so that your life can speak and teach others about the goodness and the greatness of God. And so as we travel through this really unusual story of Hosea and Gomer, when the Lord told this prophet to the nation of Israel, go and marry a prostitute, he did it as an example to show the nation of Israel that actually your idolatry worship is the same as adultery in a marriage. They thought they could worship God and have a little bit extra on the side as well. And so we traveled through the story of Gomer and Hosea. But what we discovered is that when Hosea took Gomer from the brothel and he placed her in a place she could call home, though she had moved physically, she'd not transitioned emotionally. To me, it gave us a picture of what it can be like in church. We can be in the church, but our mind and our mindset can be elsewhere. And that's a really difficult place to be. Though Gomer was in the house was not in her. And what we can find happens is though we're in the house of God, the ways of God are not in us. So we find ourselves with one foot in the church trying to be the Christian and one foot in the world living as we choose. We keep revisiting our own mindsets. Gomer was okay being in the house when life was good. She knew how to play the role of a wife when life was good. She knew how to operate and she knew how to be. But when pressure and problems arrived, she didn't know how to be in the house then. She reverted back to her old ways. She would sneak out the house and she'd just go off for a bit of fun. She'd just go off to be her old usual self. And you know, this can happen to you and I also, right? This can happen to us because so often when problems arise, we run back to the person we were. We say we're followers of Christ. We love Jesus with all of our heart, right? But how many times when problems arise, do we go back to being the angry person? Do we blaspheme? Do we swear? Do we gossip? Do we fill ourselves with self-pity, feeling hurt, rejected, and offended? And so this is what it can look like for us too, that we can still keep going back. When you move physically, but you do not transition emotionally, that is allowing God completely into your heart to change your thinking and your behavior, then what happens is you can be in one place, but mentally in another place. The other thing that we found about Gomer was every time she sneaked off, she got pregnant. And she got pregnant with babies that were not Hosea's. And you know what happens is that every time we revisit the past in our mind, every time we go back to behaving like that person, making the same silly choices, doing the same things, acting the same way, speaking the same language as we used to speak, we get pregnant with something that is not of God. We carry something on the inside of us that we don't want to be carrying. We get pregnant with jealousy and pregnant with pride, pregnant with fear and pregnant with lust and wrongful living. And then what happens is when we've made a mess of our life, we want God to bless our life. But God can't bless what is not his. So if you're choosing to do something, to act and speak and be a way that is not of God, God can't bless your life with seeds that were not from him. Just to wrap up what happened in the story is that one night when Gomer sneaked off and she never returned again, he went out looking for her. Hosea was all over the town looking for his wife, looking for the one he loves. And I reminded you that that's what the Father heart of God does to you and to I. When you've been missing, when you don't have the same relationship with him that you used to have, he's looking for you. When you don't worship him like you used to worship him, he's missing you. When you don't pray to him the way you used to pray to him, he wants to know where you've gone. He misses the sound of your voice. When you come to church, but you're not serving in the church anymore, he's like, where's your first love gone? I miss you. I want back what we had. And Hosea, we remember the story, he went into the brothel and he found her, and she got that mixed up with her past life, that she was now on a slave table, bound in chains with a price over her head, and men were bidding for her. In the same way that every time we revisit the past, mentally, emotionally, it puts chains on us. What started out as a bit of fun, we now become enslaved to. Chains of bitterness, chains of brokenness. And the chains that the world wants to put on you, the chains that your sin puts on you, they look ugly on the new you. But instead of Hosea walking away, instead of him saying, I've had enough of that woman, she is a disgrace and I'm done with her, he stands up and he says, whatever the price, I will pay it for her. Whatever the cost, I'll go above and beyond. I will redeem her. I will cover her shame. I will pay a high price. I will take her because she belongs to me. Hosea's name means Savior. And I want you to remember today, that's what Christ did for you. For there is a piece of Gomer that lives in each and every one of us. But he redeemed us by his unfailing, unconditional love. So as you go about your life group tonight, I want you to have some conversation of maybe some areas where you identify with Gomer, and maybe some areas that you struggle in, and it takes a bold person to be able to have some good conversation like that, right? But then I want you to be able to see where Jesus has stepped into the equation of your life and showing you unmerited, undeserved, unconditional, redeeming love. Have a great night, people.